Hello, everyone. I am Ariella Mortkowitz, the founding director of SVIVAH. SVIVAH is about creating a more nourishing communal faith experience for women, where we define both Jewish and women very broadly. If you want to be here with us, we want you to be here with us and welcome. We love that we are multi-generational and diverse in our backgrounds and our affiliations, and we come together in celebration and support of women and our unique strengths and ways of walking through the world. HerTorah is a SVIVAH program under the direction of Rabbanit Eliza Sperling, which was designed to create a comfortable space for women to come together who may not have found each other for other reasons and come together over our shared foundational texts, bringing our lived experiences, our unique eyes on the world together to learn with and from each other and elevate both the experience of learning together and the Torah that we're learning together through that process. We also love that we get to celebrate and highlight and learn from the most glorious, diverse teaching body of tremendous leaders and thinkers and educators who come to share so much of themselves with us in the process of learning. And I want to take a minute before anything to say a thank you to those who make HerTorah possible. First, obviously, Rabbanit Eliza Sperling for her thoughtfulness and creativity in designing rooms where we can come together so meaningfully and learning from each other. To Yeshivat Maharat for their partnership in raising the bar of excellence in Torah scholarship and elevating and valuing women's voices. And to the Aviv and Covenant Foundations for their faith in HerTorah and creating a unique way of learning together in community. We are taking a departure from our usual HerTorah way, which is, you know, in those past days, a chance to be with each other in a room in person and then on a Zoom room in person. And we're using this month of Elul that's coming up in advance of the high holidays to really showcase and highlight some of the most phenomenal and wonderful educators and speakers and thinkers and bring them right to you. We love that we can find this diverse, amazing group of women scholars and spend time thinking with them and hearing from them about how they're preparing for this new year, how they're walking into this new year, and how they're using this month to kind of reframe their own focus on what this new year will bring and share that with us so that we can benefit from that. So if you want to learn from any of these amazing, I hope that you do, because it's worth your time. Take a minute, go jump on our website, www.svivat.org. Sign up for our mailing list. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and you will have all of these amazing educators pop up right in your inbox. And each one of them is different and unique in answering these same questions. And today I am blown away with excitement by getting to hang out with one of my absolute favorite teachers of all, Dr. Jane Shapiro. Thank you so much for coming and doing this today. Thank you for being here.
Oh, happy to be here with you. And I likewise, having a wonderful conversation is always what I can expect when I see you. So happy to be here. So
I love that when I hang out with you, you're always thinking in preparation for that, you know, your Pesach preparation happens so far in advance. You're always that person who's not like me, who's the last minute at everything, but you are so good at reminding me to think ahead and to get into the right frame of mind for what is to come and bring that intentionality instead of you know, the craziness that is life, that I'm sure so many people's August is looking like, with the insanity of back to school or last minute vacations or whatever it is, to realize that Rosh Hashanah is upon us. And I really appreciate how you've been thinking about this for a while so that I'm not surprised when Rosh Hashanah lands in my lap. I get to, can I sing your praises for just 1 second and tell everybody how amazing you are?
Just embarrass me. Yeah.
You can look away, just look away, it's fine. Dr. Jane Shapiro has been teaching for 30-something years and is the consummate teacher's teacher. You're the founder of Orot, the Center for New Jewish Learning, which I love how beautifully you fuse intentionality and creativity into Jewish text study. Everybody should please go check out the Orot, what is it? orotcenter.com?
Center.org.
.org. The classes are phenomenal. The educators are just beautiful humans, and there are such incredible classes and offerings. And Jane, you teach some beautiful ones, and I've loved being in your classroom many times. Thank you, and plan to do it in the future, I hope. You are an expert in curriculum development for adult learners, and you've been awarded the prestigious Covenant Educators Award. I'm also, which is not like the idea of transitioning quickly from that, like let's pause and just go, yes, you are an amazing, amazing Jewish educator and thinker and scholar. And thank you for being here today. And I also want to tell everyone who is a bubby or has a bubby to go take a minute and go check out Jane's Eli talk.
At some point too. So yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I sent it to my mom. I sent it to my mother-in-law. It was the best. The Eli talk on the Torah of bubbyhood. I'll make sure to include it in the notes from our gathering so that everybody can find you and listen to it, because it was so great. And I think particularly now when so many bubbies have been challenged in showing up in their traditional bubby roles, that is actually really beautiful Torah for right now.
Thank you.
So everybody go take a listen to it. Yes. I am so thankful that you decided to hang out with me this day. And and can I ask you to share how this Elul, this time before Rosh Hashanah, what's on your mind these days, how you're preparing for this year in particular, and what you'd like to share with us?
So it's not Yom Kippur yet, but I guess I have to start with a vidui of sort, a confession. This year of quarantine was really hard on my praying life. I just felt without the anchor of like shul and being able to sing with my community and seeing everybody in my community every time and sort of being on my own a lot, that my ability to pray and just dialed down a lot. And I feel bad about it, but I just thought that it just happened. I didn't intentionally start to do that. And I think it has a lot to do with the inability to sing with many people, because I love to sing, and that was important. But what I also noticed that happened is that something from our tradition very neatly kind of slotted in and filled its place. And I have been doing Daf Yomi, which I had started in January of 2020 because I had FOMO. I didn't want to be left out. The next time there was a CM, I thought, like, I'm going to do this now. It's the next 7.5 years. And
wait, can you explain to those who might not know what is Daf Yomi and the CM and all the things?
Okay, so Daf Yomi is something that I don't even know the whole history of it, but it's been around for a long time. Not hundreds of years, but maybe 100 years, if I'm not mistaken. I just want to, anytime I want to give a shout out on HerTorah to Rabbanit Dasi Fruchter, who teaches a shiur and Daf Yomi. She's amazing. But what it is that somebody parsed out and said, if you read one page, which is a folio, one side and another side, every day for 7.5 years, you would complete the entire cycle of reading the whole Talmud. And it's called Daf Yomi, daily page. And so there are communities of people all over the world. Initially, it was just a guy's thing. And people would go to shul or listen to a podcast, or you would see people on the train when I lived in New York with their Talmuds, and you could see that everybody was on the same page. And so over the last number of years, certainly the previous, so every 7.5 years, a group of people start on the same page and finish on the same page. And you could see pictures of these massive events at Madison Square Garden, maybe 5 women in the back somewhere, but no women, until Rabbanit Michelle Farber and a group of women in Israel, mostly, not just in Israel, said, like, why them and not us? And so they began teaching Daf Yomi also to groups of women. And now it has become a thing. And in January of 2020, there was the big center in Jerusalem, the big auditorium was filled with women who either were also completing or who were celebrating the group of women of all ages who studied Daf Yomi. And I was just blown away. And that's when I said, like, I want to be in this room. It was very Hamilton. Like, I don't want to miss out being in this place again and sharing that excitement. And I don't have a limitless 7.5-year cycles. Once you're a bubby, you start thinking in that way.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I got to get started. So in a very, I think, really important way, the routine of every day I could tap into sometimes really obscure and complicated things that maybe I understood well, maybe I didn't. And then beautiful agadot and inspiring things. And every day there's something different happening on the page. And so that became an anchor, a spiritual anchor for me in the last 1.5 years during COVID, that if I didn't have a davening life that was satisfactory, this was something I could do and activate every day. And it is a form of community, because you go on Zoom calls, and every time we conclude one tractate, one section, there's what's called a siyum, and people get on Zoom, and there can be hundreds of women or people from all over the world who are all celebrating the same thing. And we always say, oh man, now we'll come back to you, but on to the next book. So it was this virtual community across time and across place that was very nourishing to me. So, in addition to my own teaching and my own students who I adore, and I love preparing to teach, do different things, this just sort of filled in a space. So that came into play this year during Elul, in the holiday season, because normally I'll read a lot of books and will just immerse myself in what have I done this year, and that deep, soulful exploration, kind of in the cavities of your being, and a little bit torturing yourself a little bit from Tisha B'Av on, like, oh, I really missed the mark. I really missed the mark this year. And that kind of anguishing, which I feel so good to go there when you come out the other end. And this year, there was something about the quarantine year that I felt like in many ways flattened a lot of that emotion for me. It didn't feel right, but that's where the Talmud really filled in for me, because right now we're reading the passages about Sukkah, not particularly to line up, like they don't do it according to like, well, what's the relevant passage that somebody needs for right now? But Sukkah is beginning to talk about shmita. There's one section where it starts talking about, well, the 7th year, the shmita year is coming, and I'll explain what that is. Well, what are you supposed to do about a lulav or an etrog if can you pick it during that year? And so lots of questions started coming up about the Shemitah year. And also because we are, with this Rosh Hashanah, are entering a 7th year. Daf Yomi is 1 7.5-year cycle. I guess this is the morning for 7-year cycles. But the Torah talks about a 7-year agricultural cycle called Shemitah. If you want to look it up, it's in Exodus 23, Shmot 23. It also is in Devarim. There's a couple places where it says, when you go in the land, you're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In the 7th year, everything lies fallow. So I've really been fixated on the word fallow. I'll talk about that in a second. Everything that lies fallow, you cannot use those things. The grain has to drop. And God says, like, people say, well, what are we going to eat all year? God says, if you perform this mitzvah, if you do it, I'm going to provide for you. So it's an enhancement of the ideas in the Torah that God owns the land. We don't own the land. We have to look to God to pray for rain and stay connected to God so the rain will fall, so God will provide for us, and that the land will grow, and that how we till the soil of the land of Israel, which is the locus. But this relationship matters. And one of the things is like Shabbat Ladonai. Okay, God owns Shabbat. God gave it to us. There's also a Shemitah Ladonai. Okay,
wow.
God gave it to us, and that we also have to make this Shabbat events happen on the land. And then you're not supposed to do anything. So they're like, okay, and there are a lot of people there are a lot of websites right now talking about what goes on in the land of Israel and ways in which people can, because along with Shemitah, and that's really a different topic, is cancellation of debt. So there's also a feeling of literally a a reset for even for us, like at post in this COVID area, like it's a reset button for the entire society, fiscally, agriculturally, and societally, to kind of even things up in some way. But I got really interested because of reading in the Talmud about the preparations, the lead up time to Shemitah. I mean, the idea of fallowness, I think, is really interesting. But it wasn't just like, I'm not a farmer, and I'm thinking like, is there something I'm going to stop doing this year? And I'm thinking about what that might be now. And really in the next weeks, like, really like, I'm going to try to commit to something that I'd like this year during the Shemitah year to remind you that you're not going to do. Maybe not eat, not do, I don't know. But in the Talmud, they talk a lot about the month before, which is my thing, because I'm always about preparing for the gateway into the phase before. To me, is a extremely important period of time. The gestation, if you will, because that's a good HerTorah. The gestation of a mitzvah, which is why preparing for Pesach matters to me. Friday, Yom Shishi, is an essential part of Shabbat. It's not Shabbat yet,
right?
But it's essential. Like anyone who's ever been in Israel on a Friday knows that it's a very special mood, feeling, or if you live in a neighborhood where people are preparing for Shabbat, you're in that phase. So these gestational phases, gateways, any of that kind of language of, I am here right now, but the work that I do in this moment prepares me for the moment of the holiday, the rituals, whatever those rituals are, that this place is something that we have way more control over and can manage. And I want to say personalize. And so how you prepare for Pesach, cleaning can become a really spiritual thing if you want it to be. And so all of this kind of was literally circling around SVIVAH. And so I thought, like, okay, this year, like Elul is a month in this year, this particular year, like what differentiates this Elul from last Elul, which was like, everyone can remember, like a horrible, painful recognition that we were not going to be together in shul. Rosh Hashanah really was going to be different. But this year, what makes this on the going into 5782 to me is very much under this colorful scarf of preparing for going into a Shemitah year. And there's a lot of interesting things in the Torah about like you have to stop. They already say like stop picking crops. There's all kinds of things that you're not allowed to use already in the month of Elul, because they're already like, you have to prepare, because on Rosh Hashanah it all comes to an end. So there's a lot of getting things ready. Any of the loopholes that allow you to sell land to somebody else in the land of Israel. And so there is stuff that you are able to eat. A lot of those kind of technical loopholes in the land of Israel are going on right now. But
it's amazing to see something so biblically, agriculturally focused actually still happening in modern day.
It's amazing. But it's amazing. But what I also like is I love the way people it isn't just like I'm in the land of Israel, I have to do this, but and that here outside of the land of Israel that we have put, I love the word accretions. We've added on to meanings, like the idea of sustainability and concerning ourselves with climate change and with debt. I heard a thing the other day saying like, really as Jews, we should be advocating for student debt in the 7th year, which is like, how amazing is that? I mean, just mindset of like, once you start to think about the mitzvah beyond not confining it to the land of Israel and farmers there, becomes really a source of enormous creativity. I read one thing by this wonderful, I want to give her I want to attribute to the right person. A Kohenet wrote a beautiful thing. Yes, her name is Kohenet Rabbi Sarah Bracha Gershuni. I do not know her, but I love this. But she made the point that Shmita is the only mitzvah that is a whole year long.
Wow.
It's a year, I know. How many, that's what you do it, it's over. You shake something, you light something, you eat something, you go somewhere. This mitzvah is a year-long mitzvah.
Wow.
So I want to thank her. It was a beautiful teaching that I will always carry with me. When you say to somebody something you're going to give yourself in, like holiness and intention, whatever it is, however you understand mitzvah, I define it as like a connection point between us and between God with potential. So for 1 year, it's huge.
Yes.
So that just people can have fun with that. So so I've been thinking about how do we prepare for Elul? How is Elul in a shmita year? What are the different kinds of feelings that come up? And so I've been asking questions like, and my students like, what does being fallow mean to you? And what steps might you prepare to become fallow in some way in your life? And what are the challenges of just letting something be and not be working it, cultivating it, managing it, activating it, just meddling with it, picking something and just literally letting it just allow it to be, whatever that thing might be, something personal, something emotional, something with respect to your work, something with respect, for each of us that can be different, which is already now 10 steps away from what the Torah says about tilling soil or anything that we cultivate in our lives. What would it look like to just say like, it will be okay. But for me, the second piece of that is what, and I will mention something that in the Talmud, like what kind of roots and nurturing things are we setting down in that soil that we're allowing just to be unseen forces or systems or connections or potential that will grow on its own if we just let it be.
Wow.
And sit and just hold it and wait. So I'm still researching this one little snippet and I haven't gotten a lot of like super good explanation of this, but I'm still, because I'm in process, I'm still tilling this for a few more weeks. But one of the things that is in the Talmud and Sukkah is they keep talking about the customs around the willow branches. And if anyone knows about Hoshana Rabbah, when we march, there's a thing with marching around, carrying willow branches, which are different than the willow branches that we hold in the lulav. The lulav has a willow branch in it, but on the last day of Sukkot, they'll bring in a box of fresh willows and people march around and then they whack them on the ground until the willows fall up. And so the rabbis are like, well, where did that come from? Because the Torah doesn't mention it. There's also a custom on Sukkot to march around and spill water. And these are on the altar. And these were temple rituals. The willow one, which I guess in some Hasidic circles, they jump over buckets of water. Maybe no, that's on Pesach. I'm wrong. That's the 7th day of Pesach. Those 7th-day celebrations, things go wild. But I don't know anybody who spills water on the floor of their synagogue. But we have these but the willows we do. But the rabbis are interested, like, where did these things come from? And so they quote a baraita. One rabbi says there's 3 halachot that Moses heard them on Mount Sinai. We're sure Moses heard them on Mount Sinai, just didn't write them down. One of them is this. Has to do with the willows, the aravot. One has to do with the water celebrations. And the third is something that they call eser netiot. Eser netiot. Just 10 saplings. 10 saplings. So I'm reading that and going like, what are those 10 saplings are little baby trees. What are they? So I guess Maimonides talks a little like, well, if lots of your land, already when Elul comes, you have to start leaving it alone. You almost have to like set an intention. You have to begin to exercise and kind of get used to the idea that this field is not going to be yours anymore by leaving it alone. But you're allowed to, these 10 saplings, you're allowed to continue to cultivate around them during Elul. And I'm pretty sure someone is listening to this might say, like, Jane, you haven't got it right. But it just jumped out at me like 10 saplings you can still interact with them in some way, just baby trees, take care of them a little bit in preparation for the Shemitah year when they're going to be left alone. So I'm fascinated by that image. And I'm fascinated by imagining, what do those little saplings mean to me? Are they children who you put a backpack on them and say like, I know you're going to go off to school this year and be okay, which is maybe yes, maybe no, we don't know. Probably not the best metaphor, but in our own lives, this is a month when we're being asked to think about what tiny things might we continue to kind of nurture for now and just say, you're going to be okay for the next year. And I'm going to step aside and just like wait and watch. I'll be here when you come back. When I come back, I'll be here for you. But these esernitiot, these 10 plantings of something, and a netta, it's like a name for a little girl in Israel. Like a netta even the sound of the word netta, it's a fragile little thing that you plant, like little things, and then you're going to just let it grow on its own. So I'm so interested in thinking about what people think what a metaphor for this might be in their own lives. Is it leaving a child at the dorm? I don't know, and say, I'll see you in the vacation time. I don't even, it's funny because I keep thinking about children are the things that's the bubby part of me, the mother part of me. But in terms of our work, is there some project that you can say, like, I'm just not ready to write that book of poetry right now, but I'm going to take all this stuff and just put it on my desk and just let it marinate. I love how people use cooking words. Like a lot of creativity is about, I take a lot of stuff in and then I just let it marinate, and then something will come out. What can it be for us not to beat ourselves up that we're not producing a book of poetry, and just let it sit there? Or some other, I've got to do this, or if this is the year I don't run the marathon, like what would it be? Like there's something in our life that we like labor with. All these productivity and labor words, and just say, like, it'll be there, and what that feels like. So that's the piece of this fallowness question that I've been thinking about a lot, and I'm finding this year is a more natural, personal way for me to be moving through this period up to Tishrei, is to kind of allow myself spiritually, emotionally, mentally, just kind of begin to be in sync with the land that is beginning to quiet down, and do that. And kind of the relationship between a person who's a farmer and the land. Like I know people in Israel right now, like they're done with their gardens, or they've got to like leave it, and they're on a they got to they figure that out, which is so interesting.
Yeah.
But so that's one piece. And then the other thing is, I was doing some teaching this week, and I love to teach with poetry. That's why I'm not a poetry writer, but I'm a poetry reader. And I came across a beautiful poem by Pablo Neruda, who's a Spanish poet. I want to just get the first page of the poem so I can, and it's just called Keeping Quiet. I'm not going to read the whole poem. It's called Keeping Quiet. I'm going to read the first few lines, and then the last part, which to me also is very much some message to me about this feels like the place to be in this month. So the beginning starts, now we will count to 12, and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment, without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. I guess I'm going to read the whole poem. So that's the first part. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victories with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. I want no truck with death. If it were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now I'll count up to 12, and you keep quiet, and I will go. So I'll send you the poem. We can put the link up if you want. But the part that when I was reading it with my students was just like, whoa, was this part. Perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death, which is so much what Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is about. Like,
Yes.
hey, your life is this, and mi yichyeh, mi yamut, and like so much like that threat of death. So this notion of interrupting the sadness of never understanding ourselves, to me, is this challenging and profound and sweet spot that I didn't come up with, sweet spot of like where I am this year in Elul of a shmita year, of like allowing this quiet to settle in so I can interrupt the course of my life, which is the sadness is like, have you measured up enough? Have you been productive enough? Have you done enough? Where have you failed? That kind of flowing motion in our lives, it drives us all the time because we want our lives to matter at the end. I think is just allows us never to deeply understand ourselves because we're always like on the move to become, reach your potential. Potential is the word potentia. It means force. Reaching your potential is to reach your like aggressive force on that. But this shmita Elul is like, what am I leaving? Like, I'm not understanding myself in some quiet, fundamental way if I'm always on the march towards my potential. And that, in many ways, to me, is countercultural to what a lot of the preparations in Elul are usually about. It's like, utkiya, gadol, yitaka, like that shofar is going to sound, like boom. And this is more like, okay, if I imagine myself just like planting those little sapling trees or observing those little sapling trees and say like, if I just sit here and like sit with you and allow myself to feel the sadness of something about myself that I've never noticed before. And maybe that's what those sapling trees represent, is something that is growing on its own. And I just have to let that happen and be, and there's sort of like two metaphors and languages that to me feel that they're speaking to each other in some way, but just to like allow those things to kind of grow on their own without meddling. I think it's not the same as, people say, well, yeah, that's a mindfulness practice when you're sitting, you're present, you don't feel like, I don't think that's what it is for me. Doesn't feel like that for me. It's just a huge silence that interrupts the sadness. To me, feels like a really like, whoa. And when I said to my students, like, what would it be like to just focus on this the whole month before Rosh Hashanah? And all of a sudden, everyone in the class just went like, oh. And so I knew that it wasn't just me kind of feeling like, yeah, some electricity just, so
It's
that's what I've been thinking about.
this imagery is, it's hurting my head and taking it in so many different directions. The idea of being productive is, and the type A personality that I am, the idea of allowing fallowness is so hard and important, and like just imagining what that even, how that manifests. And I'm listening to you and remembering we had Dr. Betsy Stone come and talk to us about what trauma in a crisis is like, and how being productive is impossible in a moment of trauma, because we're conserving our energy to just make it through. And the idea that this is a shmita year and this is another weird new year and high holidays again, when initially it was so much of this like, oh, what's the new year that we're going to build, and what's the new life that's going to come after, and what have we done, that emphasis on productivity, and again like manipulation and doing, and our engagement.
Right.
And instead of just saying like, no, maybe we just have to sit and be and watch what grows.
Yeah.
And hope that the sapling pieces of us and whatever it is that we've put in the soil yields something good.
You know, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about the other place in the Talmud that talks about planting trees, which for anyone who's ever celebrated Tu B'Shvat knows the story of Choni, right? Which we also read in the Daf a couple months ago. And that whole notion of, I'm going to plant this tree. I may not live to see it, but my grandchildren will. So that's why, of course, so it's not even, maybe I'll live to see it's my child's lifetime, in your grandchild's lifetime. So it really does put off far away. It's beyond your narrow life frame. So there's a lot in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, which is like reminding us that we're mortal, reminding us that our time is limited. We have to do like that, you know, like literally like you gotta make that, generates that kind of tension. But this shmita mentality is li kol haaretz. It have no illusion, like the natural world, like planting sapling trees live so far beyond that, allowing yourself to be fallow and to just watch those forces unfold takes away that feeling of it's confined to you. That can, and we use the word hope. I mean, you know, looking beyond, you know, whatever's going on in the world right now, we wanted to generate a world that will be better, not just in the short term for us, like snap out of it, let's go back where we were before. But I think everyone is praying that the outcomes of this world yields a better, simpler, more loving, more compassionate, more understanding, healthy world. And those are longer than our own lifetimes. And the forces of, and I trained as a historian also, many of the things that we're observing right now will take years to figure out what happened and what has happened. We won't see all those things instantaneously. Those are things. And so this whole Shemitah year is like, let things lie and just let these things be. And without your, like, you know, applying tools to them in some way, and hope can grow, and potentially and possibility. It's almost like replace potential with the word possibility. I like your smile.
I like that mentality, the idea. I'm grateful for this now nuance and overlay of the idea of Shemitah being part of this year in particular.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us could have even handled that juxtaposition last year.
No, last year that would have been very, very painful.
What do we do? The idea of relinquishing control and hoping that our work, our toil, whatever that we've put in, actually does yield what we want, and to take this time of Elul and perhaps this whole year of watching those saplings to reflect and go, what I've put in is not yielding, it's not going to yield what I need, or yes, it just takes time.
Yeah, but to sit with that, and that's why I love the Neruda poem, to allow that to happen with he says, perhaps a huge silence, to allow yourself. It's not just, I'm going to let things be fallow and remain that productive potential person. I'm waiting. And the minute the year's over, I'm going to pounce again, right? They're saying, like, let this mitzvah that's for a whole year change your disposition. Let it modulate you. Let it alter how you do things. Allow you to let yourself off the hook for things that you thought you could fix this year, which I think a lot of people I know need a little, like, oh my God, my kid didn't master their piano exercises this year in COVID. Like, okay. Allow yourself, like, not just being waiting to go back to who you were before and being that productive person, but allow this fallowness that the earth is telling us to do, and to allow all of us to just kind of just let things nurture. And we don't know what will happen to ourselves, to our world, if we kind of allow things to emerge in each other. I have a big, just in other words, I really believe that communities and institutions have an organic cycle to them. And I know, and just starting Orote with my partner, Rebecca Minkus Lieberman, that what we thought it was going to be when we started and what it is. And now we're not, oh, it's our 7th birthday. Not that. I hadn't thought about that. So thank you. It grew in organic ways. It grew the way it needed to grow because it was responding to the community of learners and things and what we were, how we were going. So like allowing things to be organic in our lives. I think, I don't know, maybe it feels good, but
it feels right.
It feels right.
It feels right. It feels like, I think especially when it's like, oh no, we thought there was an end in sight, that, there is this actually like demarcation of time, of some sort of like, this is a cycle and this is how you behave. And this is what we do during this moment that feels unending, that feels like, again, beyond our control. I'm curious because I kind of want you to be the person to go, okay, how was your shmita year this time next year?
Yeah, well, we can touch base during the year too. People develop. That's why I've been reading, like somebody said, one person said, like, I'm not going to buy any new clothes this year. I have enough clothes. Yes. And if I don't buy new clothes, some child in a factory in Asia is not, like stringing out, or I'm not going to eat chicken this year. I'm not going to eat it because of the way it's produced. I mean, like there's all kinds of ways that you can sort of spin out whatever your commitment is. I'm curious but it can also just be a subtle thing, like let that thing that you thought that project, let it just sit there this year. It'll be there in a year.
You can let a million things go. Your work related, relationships related, like let it go and see what happens.
Yeah. People sometimes like they have you're supposed to fix that relationship with that person right now, and Rosh Hashanah is coming, you're better. And it was just like, maybe that relationship needs some quiet and there may be time. It's just the more you start to think about, like, how do I have to prepare myself to become fallow?
Mm-hmm.
What would be the focus of fallowness in my life? And then that's this work of the Elul and the shmita.
Yes.
What am I preparing to do? What the experience is like during the year is something to come back to and say, like, oh, yeah, how's that going for you? Like, what can you like forgive or let go of or put away potential? And just, I like that. You really inspired me. Let's put away potential and think about possibility and just let it, something that's possible is random.
Yeah.
It can go one way, it can go in the other way. You can't control it.
Yes.
Possibility. Yeah.
Yes. Are there rituals to end shmita?
There must be. I haven't gotten to them
yet. You haven't gotten into the depth yet.
I'm just an adult learner like everybody else. I don't know. I'm not an expert in this. We could ask Rabbanit Dasi. She might know. Okay. And when I get to tractate Shvi'it, there's a whole section of the Talmud all about the Shvi'it. It's the seven. I'll know more because there's lots of rules. But right now, this just like in true Talmud form, it kind of just, it showed up at the appropriate time in the Talmud, so I could glean from it for this year, because it was around the Lulav and the Etrog and things like that, and the Aravot, and so this popped in it. So I'm not even studying the laws of Shemitah right now, but they kind of showed up because I must have needed them. So
no, this is amazing, and I'm going to print out that poem and stick it in my machzor for Rosh Hashanah and just
beautiful poem.
Sit on that and really think about how to live Shemitah that feels really different, really distant, right? It's not something that's, and how to live it this year, because I think you're right. I think we need it.
Yeah.
And it's shown up for us. I'm hoping that's why it's shown up for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So
thank you for this, Torah.
Oh, I enjoyed being asked to think about it. I certainly inspired seeing your faces. I'm talking about it and going back and forth. And I hope it's something that people, I hope it's helpful. I hope it's helpful to people. So
I love it. I think that for some reason, the craziness of the timing of the Chagim, the holidays this year, is so upon us. It is very early. And I think having this weird Elul that is, again, not always in community, we're not having that constant reminder. This is a nice quiet, and you're right, it's not a mindfulness practice. This is a deep introspection and reflection on who you are and how you are in the world as you think about letting go.
Yeah.
Wow. Jane, thank you.
Love, I love talking to you.
Same. I'm going to make you come back.
We can do a little fallowness checkup during the year. So
yes, please. I want to wish you and your beautiful family a Shana Tova Mitzukah. May it be sweet, may it be good, may it be healthy. And to everyone who's listening, please go find Jane, go learn with her, go learn with Rebecca, go find them at Orot. They are wonderful, wonderful educators, and their whole roster of teachers are amazing. You can please pay attention to the other amazing educators who are coming up. You can go to our website, svivah.org, and sign up on our mailing list so that all of these interviews and more come to your inbox. We hope this is not the last time that we get to hang out with you this Elul in advance of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but just in case it is, we will wish you too a Shana Tova. May it be sweet, sweet, sweet. And we hope we see you throughout the year. Jane, thank you so, so much.
Shana
Shana Tova.